Ymt218 Object-Oriented Programming. We are still discussing Chapter 12. This is the second part, and this is the last part of the whole syllabus. GUI applications or GUI programming in Python. We discussed the introduction part, and we explained how we can use tkinter module to create GUI applications. And we explained also that it wasn't just restricted to tkinter. We can use, or we can apply other modules to create GUI applications. It depends on your preference. However, tkinter comes as a built-in module with whatever Python you're using, and in that case, you don't need to install it or import its module and incorporate it with your own Python. So let's just carry on again with GUI applications and complete the widgets that we didn't explain in the previous session. This is just theory. I'll try to limit the explanation for the practical side. We will have other sessions for practical, and in these sessions we will just extensively discuss all widgets in details, and we will have some real applications to create. And not now, later on. So now we will just restrict it to the theory. We will go through buttons. So we will have button widgets and some dialog boxes. We will explain also about the entry. We will address using labels, and finally radio buttons and check buttons, or check boxes if you like to call them. Okay. So for buttons, like any window application or graphical user interface that we use in our daily life, we have a button to be clicked. And based on this button, we produce something after clicking it, because we don't just click a button of an application for fun without producing anything. Even if you receive a message after texting, after clicking on that button. So the idea is producing some interaction while clicking on that button. So this button widget is available. We can use it by its name, button with capital B in this case. It's available in tkinter, so we can import that module to use button. But we have to supply three main things. We explained about labels before, but we explained about only providing two things, like the text we want to display, also the where to place the label, for example. In the button, we will have to specify where to place it. This is the first argument. The second argument, the text displayed on it. And the third argument, what's supposed to be done after clicking on this button, or the function of the button. So this is what we call callback function. So when you click on a button, there should be some response or event handling. Sometimes we refer to it by this technical term of event handler. So once we click on a button, there must be a response to an event of clicking of that button. Okay. So that's the idea. We have something we call callback function. We have to create it. Is the response of the button click in this case. All right. Look at this. This is just a simple creation or simple code for creating a button. Again, we need to import the tkinter. Creating the window, you know these things, the main window, or call it main window, call it window, call it whatever you like. And then we can create. I'm not using object-oriented now just to limit the explanation about practical. We will have our practical later on. So in this case, I'm creating a button. So what I said is we can use the tkinter and button widget the way it is. And now we have three arguments here to be supplied for this instance. Where to place it, window, the window that I created, and what kind of text you want to display. This text here, click here, for example. So you provide your text and make sure that you encapsulate it by single quotes, double quotes, or even triple quotes, but you have to encapsulate it by quotes anyway. The command, this is the callback function. I have to provide what's supposed to be done when this button is clicked. Now I kept it empty, null, and for that case, if you click, nothing happens. It will click, but nothing happens. And this is exactly what I wanted to do. There is no point of creating a button with no callback function with no response or event handling. So what's the point of creating a button without providing any functionality? So that's what we will learn. We will provide here a callback function. We can customize it to do some job for us. And this method or function, we can manipulate. It's up to us. We can design it. It's a user-defined function most of the time. All right. So let's say you want to produce a message when you click on this button. So instead of just clicking and having nothing, we can use message dialogues, or actually message boxes. And in that case, we can import them. If you want to display just a message from using tk-enter, you have to specifically import message box. So you use again tk-enter. So in this case, you have to import tk-enter, and also you have to separately import tk-enter.messageBox. So it will allow you to display a dialog box or a message box in this case, and display something in that box. So we can use it again as a module in this case, tk-enter.messagebox.showInfo. This showInfo function allows you to have a title. You provide a title for the message box itself. I'll show you some example, and then the message inside the box provided here. Now look at this. For example, I modified the previous code. It's just for simplicity, it's too small so that we can explain about it in just one slide. What I did, now I don't want the response of my button to be null. I create for it, now look at the modification here I did. I create for it in the command do something. This is a method, okay, or a function, you can call it callback function. Now in this callback function, I have to define it, since this is structured programming, not object. Well, I'm not creating even modulars here. If I create main, it could be fine. Why? Because a method will call, or a function will call another function. Since this one is structured, if you provide this definition of the method after the definition of the button, do something will not be known. So I put it on top here, so it will be defined once we reach to the comment. If you want to get rid of all this definition problem, you can create a main method, place these inside the main method, okay, and create another method, this one. Then a method or a function will call a function. So create the main function and the do something function, and then a function will call another function. Or we will take this one in practical. We will create a class. So we will use the object-oriented, and we will have an instance, and in that case there will be no problem. Also, a function will call a function, or an instance of a class will approach a function somewhere. All right, so for the time being, I put this one on top to be defined once we reach here. Okay, so what's the idea? I didn't change anything. I created a window, and I created this button. I changed the comment. So it was null before. Now I'm providing inside here is do something, a function. So do something is a function, needs definition. So we have to define it. Def do something, it's a function. It doesn't receive any argument in this case. Now one thing, I want to display just a text. This one, thank you, for example, when we click on this button, okay? So what happens? I can use tk-enter message box. And from this message box, I can use showInfo. ShowInfo is exactly similar to the scenario. It's a message box with a title and displayed text here. You can customize also this exclamation mark or whatever available here for info. But this is not its time. Now we will speak about this one in practical with some examples later on. The main two arguments here is the title. So provide the title here. First, it will appear on top here on this bar, and then the message that you want to display. So if you want to display some message, it's not necessarily that thank you, you can display anything. You just need to provide it as a next argument. Now this backslash here, you know that is just concatenation because I don't have enough space, or sometimes I limit going like this horizontal side. So I move to next line to make the outcome or the code itself nicer in its view. So now we know how to create a response. do something, or callback or event handler, and produce maybe an output. But this is not exactly what we usually do with buttons. We may have calculations, we may have different things, like for example, if I click here, this is just a message, a response, but sometimes we need to create some calculations, sometimes we need to quit even. The button itself is a quit. In order for us to create a quit button, we can customize the callback itself to something we call destroy. So this method here, destroy, will collapse or terminate the main window that you create. So here, if this one is actually meant for a quit button, the command itself would be destroy, window.destroy. You don't have to customize anything. Destroy will know its own job, and we will see how we can create it like this. I have already provided this example. So you change the command itself, and you can customize the text and where you want to place it, then window.destroy. Now, window may change the name. You have to pay attention. It's actually user defined, and in that case, you need to know what to write. Some people use main window, some people use window, some people use main. It's up to you. Some people even use different names other than those, but it depends. So once you provide this destroy, you click on that button, the window will disappear, or will collapse, will terminate. So we learned about labels, we learned about buttons. Now we need to learn about entry. Let's say I want to receive an input from the user. So I can use the entry widget, and it's a rectangular actually shape that allows you to type in it. You can type only one line in this case, and usually we use it for receiving either numeric or short strings actually. And what we will have here is like an input. So once we have this input, what are we going to do with it will be determined by something we call get method. So we have a method called get that you can enter from here, but what will you do with it? Okay, so this is exactly the idea. So in order for you to retrieve what the user enters in that entry, you need to use another method that helps you to return or actually retrieve the data from the entry. We will see it in practical. I don't want to go through it now. Now let me explain about it, how it is done. And the reason why I'm not coding now, it's just the theory part, so that don't worry, we will have practical for it. So enter a distance in kilometers. For example, this is a very popular example for the, as a converter between kilometers and miles. This is an entry. So we input something here, and once we click convert, we need to get it, and once we get it, we can convert and display. Now we can use a message box dialog or message dialog box to display the outcome. So previously what we did, we displayed here thank you. We can display the calculation. It's not necessarily text. We can display this calculation. It's possible. Okay, so we can calculate and place here and place our statement. We will see how we can do those practically. Just understand the idea that we have an entry where we can get some input from it in GUI applications in Python. For we can use label. We explained about labels before in the first GUI session. First part of chapter 12. We said we use it for displaying text or displaying things. We can use label for displaying output also instead of dialog boxes. Now, maybe I'm not interested in displaying this statement here on a dialog box separately. I want it to be here, maybe below this button or above the button, top or bottom or whatever. Maybe next to this one, for example, I want a label that displays the output, the conversion. In that case, I can use a label. So the label we used before for displaying some text, we can use it for displaying some output. It's possible. And in that case, what we need to do, we need to use something we call string variable, string var. It's written this way, string var, capital S, capital V, and it's actually available module in tk-enter, available class in the tk-enter module, where we can receive an object and create it actually, or place it on the label, and that's possible. So we can place this string variable on a label and display it as an output. So what will happen is, instead of displaying just a text or whatever, no, we can create our own string variable and place it to the output like this. For example, now look, enter distance in kilometer. Earlier here, look at this. It was just like this, but the display was on a dialog box. Now we want to convert this and place it here. So we have a label. Now look here, we have a label, and this label will accept a string variable and display it here like this. And it's convenient. There are a lot of applications do these things or have these things as features on them. So we will learn how to use a string variable practically, how to convert maybe a calculation, an integer or a float, or maybe a string to a string variable, class or object of class, and then place it on a GUI as an output when needed. Radio buttons. Radio buttons actually usually a small group or a group of buttons that you can select one of them. So if you select one, all others will be deselected. And if you want, you can specify the one that's selected by default, and then you can place it first or second or whatever by default, your customization. And if it is not the one of the choice of the user, once the user clicks on or checks the other one or clicks the other one, any one of the group, the one which was already selected or which was selected in advance will change. It will be deselected. So radio buttons usually are available in groups, not just one. It's possible to have only one radio button, but that's not practical. So it wouldn't fit the purpose of radio buttons. How do we use them? We have radio button the way it is written. Radio R capital and the rest are all lowercase. Widget, so we can use this widget from the TK enter, and we can create a group. Now if we have radio buttons, like let's say I have a group of radio buttons here, let's say 3, how can I distinguish which one is selected? We can assign a value to them. So imagine that we say the first radio button has a value of an integer variable, which is 1. The second one has a value of 2. The third one has a value of 3. So we can assign this integer variable from int var, capital I, capital V, and in that case we can assign to it the object here. In this case is an object of this class. We can assign it to these radio buttons, and once you select one of those, you will know, your program will know which one is selected. You can create cases like if, else, and see which integer variable is selected in that case, and you can, based on it, you can customize the outcome. How can we do it? Practically, we'll have applications about it, not now. We can create, a command for the callback function or method, and we can customize the outcome based on which one is selected. Right. So the last part of this chapter is about the check buttons. Sometimes people call them check boxes, but in Python, because of the official name of it is written check button this way, widget, we call them check buttons. For check buttons, we, unlike radio buttons, we can check more than one button. You may find them in group, of course, but it's not necessarily that you check one or any. You may not check any of them if the choice is allowing you, or if the option is allowing you, but you may check more than one. So it's like a checklist. You can check or tick whatever you is available or suitable to you. Okay, so these are not mutually exclusive. This is important because for radio buttons, they are mutually exclusive. Once you click on one, the rest will be selected, so you're selecting one. For the check button widgets, you can check all of them or any of them or some of them and so on. So in that case, we can associate the int var object to these check buttons with different values. Okay, it's not just not like the radio buttons. Unlike radio buttons, why? Because we have to associate to it different variables each one has its own weight in this case. And for that case, to distinguish between these check buttons, we need to assign different integer var for each one of the check buttons. How to do it? As I said, I will have 2 or 3 sessions, maybe 2 sessions to create a complete GUI practically coding. And this is the last slide of this chapter. This is the end of the whole syllabus of our object-oriented. We will just have the last sessions of the practical very soon. Till then, have a good time. Goodbye.